Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Chris Worley, and I'm the Director of Technology Services for the Learning Technology Center. We're here today to talk all things SOPPA. This is our weekly conversation about SOPPA. The next session will be next Tuesday at 2 o'clock. Your Zoom link should work for that. The link for the bit.ly should be the same as last week. And at the end of this presentation, at the end of the presentation should be all the slides from last week as well. Also, the recordings for this and a couple tutorials that Sean Mullins from Olympia School District did are available at the YouTube link that's on this page. For those of you that are new to SOPPA and have found this this weekly conversation, this is a location on our website that you can find this information. So if you go to ltcillinois.org and find the services data privacy link, you can learn more about what SOPPA is and and share that with your superintendent, your assistant superintendent, your curriculum person, your technology person, whoever it is that you may need to share information about SOPPA. Couple different things on this page. One is just the overall what the law is as comes from the legislation. Also, there's a video here that you can play for your superintendent or for other people that are interested in the information. And then down here at the bottom is an in brief from Robin Swartz on what is SOPPA. SOPPA is a way to protect student privacy, and we do that through knowing what applications we're using in our school districts and what data is being shared with them, with those operators and vendors and applications. And then we enter into a data privacy agreement to basically decide how we're going to share that information back and forth and what they are able to do with it and what our rights as school districts and as students and as parents, what we have the rights to be able to do. So how are you feeling about SOPPA? Just a word to describe it: anxious, overwhelmed. I like the term better. You're not necessarily going to feel the best about anything, but hopefully you do start to feel better about this. Confident, there's a good one. Lost, hopefully through these webinars we can keep you from being lost. The weekly agenda, what we're trying to do here is just give you some updated information, try to show you progress is being made, and I think we can definitely show that even just from last week, and then give you a couple of tips each week, and then also share out some new resources, which we do have this week, and try to answer some questions. And then as time permits and as people want to stick around, I'll do some how-to. I've got a couple things that in mind, but if there's other things that people want to actually get shown how to do something, we can do that as well. So line up with some statistics from last week, and you can see just using the same number, same description, statistics, the participating districts, just even from last week, there's 20 more districts that have requested an account in the ISPA database. So I think that's a positive thing. The number of signed DPAs has increased, and the number of unique districts with DPAs is up 5. So that means that people are actually using the database, and so that's good. And then the number of originating DPAs has gone up by 13, so from 36 to 49. And if you don't understand these terms, stick around, and I'm actually going to talk about some of these things today. And then the unique resource requests, that's just a way for people to put in that they're interested in getting agreements with things, with different resources, with different vendors. In the future weeks, we won't necessarily have to really talk too much about this, but just seeing that the number of signed DPAs, seeing these things over time, I think is going to be a positive thing for us to kind of see that things are happening, that we are making progress, and that what we're doing is working. So here's just a list of the latest originating agreements. So an originating agreement is basically an agreement that a school district has gone into with a vendor in the terms of the legislation. They term them as operators. So with an operator, there's an agreement, a data privacy agreement using the kind of the standard agreement, and there's an exhibit E in there that says general offer of terms that allows another a subscribing school district to then subscribe to that original agreement and be have an agreement in place with that particular vendor. So by having these originating agreements in the database, other districts can then subscribe to those and basically upload a single page document that will be emailed to the operator that will then fulfill the fact that you have an agreement with that vendor. So this is just the latest list of originating agreements. And if you check back in on last week's conversation, we showed how you can find those agreements and know which ones are available and which ones may not be available at this time. So just some tips and suggestions, and I think I had a couple emails this week about this particular issue. When you are uploading an agreement and the screen comes back to like nothing happened, like it should have gone to another screen, it comes back to the original screen. And that's something I'm working with SDPC to understand if there's a way that we can get an error message rather than that particular functionality happening. But basically they're saying that the file's too big and it won't upload properly. So we have to go through an additional step on those particular agreements to reduce the file size. And you can do that if you're using Acrobat. You can go to File and Reduce File Size and basically doing a save as, but it's actually a compression process. Or you can actually go to this link on this at Adobe and compress your PDFs. The example that I did actually took a document from 10 meg down to 3.5. So if we start thinking about the number of files that are going to be posted and linked inside this database, it's probably a good practice to go ahead and reduce the file size. If you have any questions about this process or it's not working for you, please reach out to me and I'll help where I can. Different agreement types that are available to us, and what ultimately we're trying to do with the database and trying to do with getting agreements and how it's beneficial to us to be able to piggyback and use the subscribing process with these agreements. So the idea of the Illinois NDPA is that the National Data Privacy Agreement has been created by the SDPC, which is the Student Data Privacy Consortium. There's now 31 states that have alliances within this consortium. And about a year and a half ago, they started the process of developing a national data privacy agreement. With that national data privacy agreement, they worked with vendors, they worked with lawyers, they worked with alliances to try to come up with terms. And that's what you'll see in that NDPA document. The other component of that is the Exhibit G, which is the Illinois portion of that. And so the Illinois portion was created through a legal team. They looked at the Illinois laws and basically came up with the Exhibit G. The Exhibit G and the NDPA together makes up the Illinois NDPA, or in the case of what you're seeing here, the ISPA standard agreement. With exhibit means the Exhibit E, which is the general offer of terms. So the ideal thing is that we have in agreement with, or we send the agreement to an operator. The operator signs off and says, I agree with the NDPA and I agree with Exhibit G, and I'm going to sign this document and allow you to have subscribing districts be allowed to sign on to this agreement, so that no changes need to be made. You've already gone to your superintendent, your legal team, your uh, school board if necessary, to say we're using this NDPA agreement, Exhibit G, and that's our basis for agreements. Then whoever's able to sign agreements should be able to look at that and say, okay, nothing's changed from the original agreement. This can be signed and we can go enter into an agreement. If for any reason, any part of that original agreement or Exhibit G, or if you add on an Exhibit H and somebody's making changes to for their vendor or those types of things, at that point, that agreement probably needs to go back to your legal team to say, hey, they're wanting to make changes. Is this a legal issue, or can we do this legally? The thing that we want to try to accomplish is that without those changes, it can pretty much be signed by the person that's able to sign agreements in the district. At that point, if that's not the case, then you can still enter into that agreement. If your legal team says that that's fine, we can do that. But at that point, if you do that, it's going to be a vendor specific agreement with Exhibit, and we can still piggyback on that. But the thing is, that's going to be a clue to every other school district that's going to be subscribing to that and say, okay, this is a vendor specific thing. It's not under the same idea of the National Data Privacy and the Exhibit G. It's not the ISPA agreement. It's modified in some way by the vendor. So if that's the case, then I probably have to have my legal team look at that. If anything changes from that NDPA agreement, then you as a subscribing school or you as the originating school need to probably have that looked at by your legal team if anything changes. If it's the same, if nothing's changed, it's a ISPA agreement, then it can be uploaded. The Exhibit E, the subscribing process would be very simple because you've already said that that NDPA, Illinois NDPA agreement is what our district is willing to sign. If anything changes in that process, it becomes a vendor specific agreement. In that case, you're probably going to have to look a little bit closer to make sure that that still is something that your legal team wants to back, that your superintendent wants to back, those types of things.
Is anyone monitoring the agreements that are uploaded right now to make sure that someone didn't make a mistake and we just assume, oh, this is the standard, but really it was vendor specific but uploaded wrong?
Yeah, that's a good question, and we're trying to figure out a way to do that at the LTC and figure out the best way to kind of make sure that what's being uploaded and what is in the database is consistent and effective and accurate in those sense. Because like right now, there's Mike McGowan brought up that there's a couple different agreements for Kahoot and just what the differences are between those two things. And one of them has expiration dates, one of them doesn't. Actually, if you dig into the actual agreements, they do, but it's not listed in the database that way. So that's something we're trying to, a process type of thing that we're trying to figure out how to do as the alliance lead for Illinois at the LTC, trying to figure that out. So that's a good question. And we don't have that process in place. But if you do see things like that as you're using the database, please reach out to me and share those with me. Kind of shifting gears a little bit from last week and doing resources first. These are a couple new resources that were developed in at the LTC, and we've tried to kind of take into account different things. So um, if there's anything in this process as we release these resources and stuff like that, if you have questions, again, please feel free to question things. You guys are the ones that are doing this and in the process of uploading documents and talking to your superintendents and your leadership and different things. So if you have questions, please, if there's things that we can fine tune and make more clear, please let us know. But this particular document, these documents are available um, at the LTC website. So if you go to ltcillinois.org and then go down to the Illinois Student Privacy Alliance, that's going to be the best place to get started with different things. And you can see on this page, we've added a couple different things, and the web page is doing something goofy. But a couple different, these 2 PDF documents are there that I'm going to share with you. Also, the calendar's there. And then something that I just realized I didn't ultimately get into the presentation today, but I will talk about it briefly. So as we release these documents, please provide feedback so that we can keep them up to date and keep things moving forward for new people and for you guys that are using these documents. One of the things that we want to do with these documents is make them kind of graphics and interactive in the sense that, like on step 1, what does that mean? Takes, when you click on, if you clicked on that, it would take you to a video or another document that would be a little bit more information about that. So that's still stuff that we're trying to do. And if you have suggestions on that, please feel free to share those. So one of them is kind of an overall process of how we can utilize this database tool to comply with SOPPA. The other document is kind of that workflow that you can utilize to go into the database tools and go down through the process and figure out, is there an agreement in place? Is it a subscribable agreement that I can subscribe to? If it's not, then I have to go and get an agreement on my own. Or if it is, then is it something that I want to subscribe to? So is there something vendor specific that I don't want to comply with or whatever? Do I want to try to do something else? So just this process, this workflow should kind of work you through those types of things. And the only thing that's really, I think, inaccurate, and I don't think there's any way to make this more accurate, is that the lower left-hand corner, the left-hand side of this chart should be exponentially bigger in the sense of the workflow and the process that it takes to do that part of it. If you work along the right-hand side and you're able to get down to that signed Exhibit E, then that's going to be just a few steps, whereas the left-hand side is more involved and more time intensive to get through that. So that's the only inaccurate part that I found so far. Again, provide feedback. I appreciate Courtney Flieger putting this together so it looks great from what information I've given her. And so if there's things that I've not thought out properly or not thought out in a workable process, please share those with me, especially those of you that are going through and finding originating agreements, and also those of you that are subscribing in that process. Please share those ideas with me. But those are 2 new documents that we put out there on our website. Additional resources that are on our website and will continue to be, will be that those YouTube videos that Sean did talking about the Illinois NDPA. So if you don't have any idea what I'm talking about when I mention the Illinois NDPA, please watch Sean's video. He takes you through those steps. You can also check out our webinars that we did early in October and November talking about those types of things. And then part 2 of that video series is going through the tools and how to upload an agreement and those types of things. And just a couple upcoming events and something that I'm would ask of you that are here today, and also be asking of those that are that I share this out with. We're going to do on March 2nd, we're going to do a webinar for SOPPA for teachers. So this will be an opportunity for if you have things that you've shared with your teachers, or resources, or if there's questions that you have for your teachers, please share those with me. You can email those to me, and that's something we can try to collectively work towards providing the best information we can for teachers to help in this process, and to communicate and be collaborative and those types of things. A couple other things, just want to point out the Be Connected webinars that we're doing from a technology services standpoint, and those are available to you. And then all of our LTC events are available on our website as well, and those are available for teachers and tech people as well. Just that, like we're gonna, the onesies and twosies that are saying that we're not going to enter into an agreement, or that you've reached out to somebody and you've had issues with them, and questions about that they don't understand what is happening, or you've heard that Google's not going to enter into an agreement, or what do we do with the State Board of Education, or those types of things. So I think, yes, those are questions to be asked. Is it something that has to be answered right now? No, not necessarily, but we do need to keep track of what those questions are, and where what those applications are that we're concerned about. But don't let that be a deterrent to you in this process. Don't get stuck on whether or not Google is going to be compliant or not. Other states have been doing this for 4 or 5 years, maybe longer, and they're still utilizing Google. They're still utilizing Microsoft. They're still sending information to their State Board of Education. So, I mean, they're working through the issues with that. So we'll figure out how to work through those issues. I know that with ISPE, we're concerned about things like CIS and Pearson testing, and the other testing that we do with Access and WIDA and those types of things. And I think the main thing is, and the good thing is, that you guys are thinking about, or that people are thinking about, where our data is going and who has our data. And that's really the first step in this whole process, is knowing where your data is going, and know who those operators are, who those vendors are. So the fact that we know that there's data going to the State Board of Education, there's data going out to Pearson through the State Board of Education. We're sending data to Google. We're concerned about whether or not YouTube's an issue because it's not a supported, or it's not part of the main core suite. It's an additional service, Blogger and those types of things. So just being aware that those are concerns that we have, I think, is a good thing. Whether or not we make or break those applications at some point is down the road, and probably not something we need to put a lot of worry and effort and time into, especially from every school district. I mean, that's something that if there's something that is happening with some kind of information, please share those issues that you're having with me, so that I'm aware of those issues. So communication, just like communicating with your staff and your teachers and your administration, also communicate with me so that I can share those issues with everybody as well. So just kind of, and we kind of answered this question, but just kind of going back to the questions here now, is anyone monitoring agreements to make sure they are accurately uploaded as standard or vendor specific? And the question is not right now, just in a one-off situation here and there, but we will work towards getting a process that will help with that and make that communication go better, and be sure to know that the system is being used consistently, effectively, and that people are able to know what they're looking at and that um, they can move on. If you already entered into a long-term agreement with a company and you cannot get them SOPA compliant, what do you do? I guess my ultimate question is why wouldn't they ever enter into a data agreement? I mean, it may be not the Illinois NDPA, but it may have to be a specific agreement that talks about data privacy, what data they have, those types of things. So um, the thing we're trying to do is protect student data privacy, and if they're not willing to do that, is that really a company that you want to be um, in using and utilizing? So I know that's kind of a simplistic answer and takes away a lot of variables, but um, I think in the end, being SOPA compliant means that you have a data privacy agreement that talks about how they're using your data, what they're using your data for, what data they have, what happens at the end of your agreement that you're not using their data anymore, or you're not using their product anymore. What happens to your data, and those types of things. And I hope that answers your question. Send an email regarding this. Will the state procure and share all resources for required state testing like IAR? Yeah, so those are questions that we have to get answered, and we'll figure out what that process is.
So just to clarify, Chris, that means
Yep.
we don't have to worry about getting those agreements, that the state is going to provide those for everybody, so we're compliant on those tools?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know that that's exactly what will happen, but at some level, I don't know the answer to that, but I don't know that anybody else is going to know the answer to that either. So don't spend any time trying to figure that out. I don't want 800 school districts knocking on the Illinois State Board of Education's door saying, hey, I need an agreement with you to do this. And really, if you look at I think the other thing that we can start looking at is, again, I didn't stay at a Holiday Inn Express, or I'm not a lawyer, or do I play one on TV? But if you look at how operator is defined, it's a business marketing towards K-12 school districts. So there may be something there that, but I think as far as what we need to do with the State Board of Education and with these different kids and access and IAR and ISA is there'll be some kind of either agreement or some kind of blanket statement that that either people can check off and post to their website, or it'll be similar to a subscribing agreement that everybody can point to on their website. So I just feel like that is something that everybody's going to have. It's not that everybody has to figure out what that process looks like. It really just comes down to the state board has to tell us what they're going to do and how they're going to do it. If there's a district altered agreement, does that mean we cannot use it, but must secure our own from the same vendor? I think that, so like, I'm guessing what you're saying is if there is an agreement, a data privacy agreement that somebody's posted to their website, and they've used their own agreement or whatever, that and it's not subscribable, there's no exhibit E to sign on to, those types of things. I think my suggestion in that case is going to be to utilize that as a starting point and share with the vendor or the operator the Illinois NDPA as, here's a way for you to have an agreement with ultimately every school district in the state of Illinois if you sign on to this and allow that exhibit E to be used.
For example, if I could just interrupt, we video for schools, and so I can find that CUSD 300 has a contract in the SDPC for WeVideo, but it says district modified. So my question is, because it's district modified, I'm guessing that I cannot then use it.
You would need to, because it's not, so that as you move across that that types of agreements, so that first one means that that first column, and this may be a better way of explaining it, that first column is you're going to need that initial legal team looking at that originating or the Illinois NDPA, and if that is the way it's uploaded without any changes, as you move across that agreement thing, there's more and more changes, and they're getting very specific to the legal team. You're going to have to either have that similar type of agreement drawn up by your legal team, or what I feel like that's something probably that they had in place before all this started. So they're just uploading that to be on their list of resources. But if somebody went to WeVideo for Schools and said, hey, here's the Illinois NDPA agreement, is this something that you're willing to sign and allow other districts to then sign on to, then that would be, we see that you already have a data privacy agreement with so-and-so based on the information in the database. And so it's going to be a benefit to them to be able to do that rather than having 800 separate individual documents sent their way. We use the Illinois NDPA as leverage for them to say, this is going to be less work for you, it's less work for us. Ideally, we're trying to get the same information, but here's the process that we can use. Does that help, Beth? Okay.
Yep, thank you very much.
All right, a couple more questions. Is there any way to export a list of the resources with originating agreements? There is and there isn't. So I have done this to create a spreadsheet that what I found is when you export that, it doesn't give you the originating icon, or doesn't give you the originating information in the originating field. So I have to talk to SDPC about why that is, but there is a way to export all those resources in the agreements. And ultimately, if you sort it before you export it, there's a way to mark. Anyway, no, there's not, but ultimately there is. If you ask that question and you want to reach out to me, if there's something specific you're wanting, and we can work through maybe some of those issues. GimKit, anyone have any info on them? Big request, but seeing no agreements. So that's something that we'll add that to I have a list of things to look for. What agreement type do you select for an ISPA contract that is between only a vendor and a client? So if it's an agreement that has not the exhibit E on it, then you would just choose the very top option, which is just the ISPA agreement without the exhibit. and are there any step-by-step videos on uploading things to the database? And that is something that Sean goes through in his videos. So if you look at that playlist, you can see that information.
Real quick, Chris,
Yep.
I was just looking in the national database for GymKit. We don't use that, but there are a lot of signed agreements nationally, and a number that have even been done here in 2021 with contact info for various people. So it might just be that nobody has reached out yet in Illinois and then inserted anything into the requests area. But they look like a pretty good candidate to get in contact with a Jeffrey Osborne, who's coming up over and over again with his contact information.
Great. And I'll as I click through here, I'll show where that information's at, and so that people can see that. One other thing that I didn't get into the resources that I meant to get in, and I've thought about this all day, and I don't know why I didn't get the slide created, but on the resources, or on the page for the Illinois State and Privacy Alliance, we've added a link here for sample ISPA communications. And again, this is an area that we're looking for feedback. If you click on this, and if there's something that you've used already as a email template to send out your agreement to a new vendor, please share that with us. Or if there's things in here that maybe come across as being not accurate, but we've kind of utilized this through, or created this document through a couple different people have helped us look at this. We looked at California's email that they send out. So this is just something that you could utilize to send out to your initial request to have somebody sign the NDPA. Also, I don't think it's mentioned in here, but we can utilize what Sean was just talking about with referencing what they've done in other states, and maybe even including a link to that as well. And then also we've started to put in here some language that would help if somebody's declined to sign it, like what happens if they do decline to sign an NDPA and they just refuse to do it, and then also what happens, what it's going to look like if we have people that aren't approved in the database, and what that might mean. So just some sample language, sample communications. We'll build this up over time. Again, that's on this page of resources. And I guess another thing that I want to, this should be a tip and suggestion, is to utilize this page as your way to get to the login to the ISPA website, so that you can see some of these new things and scroll through here and see what's going on, and find new resources. And this is where that stuff will be posted. Obviously, if you're staying in touch with these weekly communication or conversations, we'll be able to know about those things. But if you're coming to this page to log in, you'll be able to do that too.
Chris, I got a quick question. Just looking at the website and the database, I see a lot of schools that piggyback off agreements that have already been done. I'm just curious how that works. Are they downloading the originating one and then uploading it through their school name, or is there a link system that you do? Thanks.
Nope. Yep. That's a good question. And there's more information about that in those tutorial videos. But basically what happens is, well, let me just show you. That'll be easier. So if I log into the ISPA website and I log in as a school district, and I come over here to your district agreements. And so if I look at view all data privacy agreements, I can see all these agreements here. And this is where I would sort by originator to get originator to the top. And what you'll see, and this is where you could download those Excel files, but you have to, and this is not on topic, but you would have to know what the last one is. So if I look at Canvas, that's the last one. So when you download that file, it would actually, if you marked all those as originating, that first column should be down to Canvas. I know that may or may not make sense, but that's a quick answer to that one question about downloading the originating agreements. Let's use Crisis Go. So this agreement, if I click on this, this will be between Olympia and Crisis Go. And if I scroll down through here, I'll see that, okay, there's an Exhibit E that's checked. So this provider is offering an Exhibit E. And I look through this document and I see that it's signed and all those types of things. What should happen during the upload process, and what I'll show you here in just a second, is that during this process, an Exhibit E should be uploaded that is signed by the vendor with an email address for the vendor where this agreement's going to go. So this was originally signed by Olympia School District on this date and signed by Crisis Go, and they're allowing the Exhibit E. So it's blank on the bottom. So all you do is you download this one page document, sign this for your school district, and then go back to the agreements, add a new agreement, and sign. Yes, I have a signed agreement, and it's going to be a subscribing agreement, or the ISPA as a subscribing LEA. And so then you're going to go through the process and you're going to upload just that one file, and then it links it to Olympia's original full document. And you can see that when you are looking at the agreements. So if I view all the state agreements and I look for Crisis Go, oops, I sort by originating. So in this case, Park Ridge, if I click on the top agreement, it should be the originating agreement with Olympia School District. And if I click on the bottom one, it should be the one that Park Ridge signed. So again, that's one of those oversight things that we need to look at the LTC on how to do that.
Thank you. That helps a lot.
All right. Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
All right. Awesome. All right. Just a couple little quick things here one is knowing where your customized resource is. And basically, if you follow the stuff in the slideshow, you can find this information. But if you go to Tools and Custom Resource Listing, you'll notice this little link here for modify account information. Basically, you can go in and you can change that information so that this stuff will show up on your page, your listing. And then if you go to step 3, is actually the link. So if I clicked on this link, it would take me to the LTC's listing, but I'm going to pull the cake out of the oven. And I'm going to use Olympia School District. And so you can see that this was what you could embed or link on your webpage so that teachers, parents, community, curriculum people, those types of things could see what is listed on your website. So this is your custom resource listing. And then this information is that customized part that you can customize for your page. Adding an agreement. So if I add a new agreement, so I've got the original agreement signed and not uploaded, but I have my PDF document and using my tip and suggestion, compressing that. So I have that document. I'm uploading and originating as the originating LEA. So I went out and got that agreement. Things that I want to have ready before I do this is my expiration, my approval date and my expiration date. And then I want to have my 2 files available. One is the full agreement and one is the 1 page agreement that is, the top half is signed by the vendor and the bottom half is blank. So those are the two documents I want to have. So I'll come in here and I'll say this is an Illinois NDPA. I'm going to choose my resources 031321. Come in here, choose the date. By default, if you looked at the agreement, it is set up to be a 3-year agreement. And then you're going to need, another thing you'll need is the email address. So that would come from that Exhibit E as well. This is going to be the full document. So this full document is going to be down below all of these screenshots. So application district name, that's the file format or file name format that we want. And then you could come through and check what grades, what content area, additional information about these different things so that you have that information on hand. This information could be added later. So once I continue, this is the location for uploading that Exhibit E. So this is the half or the 1-page document. Again, file name is application district name, and with the letter E at the end, just designating that this is the Exhibit E. Save that file, go to the next step. It asks for what data elements that you can put this in, or you can skip this step. You can always go back and add this later. So if I want certain things in there, I don't have to have this at all. Click Save Information to move on. You can put the vendor contact information. That helps for future reference, like Sean was referencing when he looked up GimKit. If you put this information in there, that helps somebody else. And then purpose can be used. A couple of people are using this for the subcontractors list, other public information that you want related to this particular agreement or vendor. When you save that, that will go into your list of resources and be available on your customized resource list on your website. So it's got your agreement and then your Exhibit E that's available, and then the data elements that you put here will be available. So that's just an example of uploading a ISPA agreement as the originating district. And then I kind of went through the process of then how you get that Exhibit E as a subscribing school. Obviously, I didn't fill that out, but any other questions? We'll pick up next week if there's certain things that you want to see, certain how-to, certain information that I'm not presenting that would be helpful to new people, to people that are involved in this process. I just want to make sure that we're providing information that's valuable to those that are using the database, but also somebody that's just learning how to use it and what they need to do and those types of things. So